Hi guys, this is Mike at Akamai, and in this short video we're going to be giving an overview of how you can use mPulse data to automatically check the performance of a release after it goes to production. Essentially make sure that after a release goes to production the performance of actual users hasn't been degraded by that release. What we're going to cover first is a quick overview and demo of what we're talking about and kind of how it looks set up. Then we're going to talk a little bit about under the hood. There's a jar file that you can download that does all this functionality, and with a single command you can execute that functionality. We'll show you how it works, where to get it, and show you how to run it locally. After that, we're going to show you how you can run it from Jenkins and use a few other Jenkins capabilities to automatically plot performance between builds, fail the job, show the HTML directly in Jenkins. And at the end, we're going to have links to some of the information that we've talked about here. So let's start with kind of talking about what this is and how it works. Let's say you pushed out a build recently and you want to know how that build is affecting user performance. Well, there's a couple things you could do. You could pull open mPulse and pull up a dashboard and take a look at the performance of the last few hours and see how that performance compares to the last day or last week of performance that you have. The only problem with that way is that it's a manual process, and you don't want to have to do that every time a build goes out, and you don't want to have to do that for every type of page group that you might have in the site to see which of those types might have failed. That's what we're going to be able to automate with this process here. Essentially what we have here, if we go to Jenkins job, we have a jar file that you can download, and all this jar file does is it reaches out through the mPulse API to grab two different time periods of data and compare those two different time periods. To execute the jar file, you just pass in java-jar dynamic loading-jar and pass in two time periods. In this case, we're going to compare the baseline time period of 2 weeks ago until 2 days ago and compare that to the time period of 3 hours ago until now. 3 hours ago until now. We're also going to allow a 20% above the baseline performance in terms of performance variance here. But if it's more than 20%, we're going to fail that particular page group. There's a couple other thresholds that we can pass in here, such as what percentage of page groups we're going to allow to fail. And then we have to pass in an API token and an API key from mPulse. And we'll show you how to get those. What's going to happen when we run this job is if I hit build now, when the Jenkins job runs, it's just going to use that API. It's going to reach out to mPulse. It'll grab the performance of those two time periods and compare them. And if anything's slower or more than 20% above what it used to be, it's going to fail that particular page group. The output is going to be a few things. First of all, there's an HTML report that gives you a summary of what we've just measured. You can see in the baseline data section the page load times for all the different pages. Like for instance, the category page used to be over the past 2 weeks 2.768 seconds. Now it's 3.066 seconds. Now that's slower than it used to be, but it's not more than 20% slower, which is 3.321 seconds. So this particular page group is passed. If we go down to these other ones, you can see that they also haven't exceeded the 20% threshold, so they all pass. But down here at the buy transaction, or the buy page group, you can see that the page load time used to be 2.6 seconds, but now it's 3.5. So that's a definite fail. So we failed this particular page group. So one of our 7 page groups has failed. There's also a second threshold that we can have here that says, well, maybe I've got a lot of page groups. I might have 20 or 30, or some customers have 50 or more page groups. And if only one of those page groups fail, do I really want to stop the whole build for that? Well, you can pass in a second threshold here that says, hey, what percentage of the page groups can fail before I consider this job a failure? In this case, we've got the threshold set at 20%. So if 20% of the page groups fail, the overall job has failed. In this case, though, only 1 of 7, or 14%, has failed, so the job is a pass. So this build could go ahead and go to the next step in the build. But that's how it works. We can automatically check the performance of this. If I go back to the configuration in Jenkins here, a couple other things I want to point out. First of all, on the right-hand here, you can see the test result trend. Every time we run this job, you can see overall how many page groups did we measure, shown in the blue, and how many of them failed, shown in the red. So you've got kind of a running trend of how many of these got worse every time a build goes out. You can also see, if you go to the plot section here, you can see the performance from different builds here. Down at the bottom are the different builds. You can see the different page groups that we're measuring and how their performance is changing over time. So you'll be able to see if things are going up or down with each build that you run. So that's how it works. As we mentioned, it's going to be a simple jar file that you download, and you run a single command that will give you the performance difference between two different time periods. Now, to get that jar file, all you have to do is go to this mPulse dynamic alerting jar file. It's sourced on GitHub, M. Ostenberg, mPulse dynamic alerting jar. And if you click on that to download it, click the download button. That'll download to your local directory. It'll warn you this is an executable, but yeah, I still want to keep that. And this is going to give us the executable. Now, I'm going to put it in a local folder here. So we're going to call this mPulse demo. I'll just call it mPulse stuff. And let's put that jar file directly into the. I shouldn't have done it that way. Let's pull that over. We're going to put the jar file right in there. And now to run the jar file, we can just run it from the command line. We don't have to use Jenkins at all. We can just open up a command shell and go to that folder. So I'm going to open up a command shell. I'm going to change directory to that folder here. Let's check to make sure we're there. Yep, so I'm in the folder that has dynamiclearning.jar. And a single command that we want to run, I've actually created a screenshot of what this is here. So this is the format of it. Java-jar, dynamiclearning.jar, pass in 2 time periods here. Pass in a baseline multiplier, what percentage above the baseline are you going to allow? And then a couple of values that you need from mPulse. One is the API token. So to get API token, you just go to mPulse API for My Settings. So I'm going to go into mPulse. We go down here to My Settings, and here's my API token. So I'm going to copy that. And if you don't have anything here, just click Generate. You'll generate an API token. And I'm going to just kind of paste that in here. I'm going to cheat and just reuse this command so I don't have to type here. The other thing that we can pass in is a name. This is just a title that we might want to put on these charts. So I'll call this mPulse demo-y stuff. And this will appear at the top of these charts. And then the API key from your mPulse app. So if I go to mPulse again, you have to have app administrator privileges to open up the app section here. And then if you open up one of your apps, you'll see the API key listed there. So this is the API key. And I'll put that into my command as well. Oh, that's really tiny. Let me sort of clean that up by passing it through here. I'll put that in here now. Hopefully that won't take the formatting with it. There we go. And then the last one is the tenant name. Now this is optional. Most customers only have access to a single tenant, so they don't have to put in the tenant name. But people in support like myself or SEs, we have access to multiple tenants, so we have to say which one we want to use. So in this case, it's mPulse demo tenant. So that's what I'm going to put in here. I'm going to do mPulse demo tenant. So that's the command we need to run. If I take this command, I'll just try not to do my own spell check there. I'll take this here, there we go, and let's go to the command line and let's execute that command. And it's kind of doing the run here. Now, the command is executed. A couple things to note here. First of all, you can see that now that it's run, it's put a few different files into my local folder here. Let's talk about what these are. The first of these is the actual HTML file. If I double click on that, that'll open in a browser and we can see kind of the pass-fail status of what we've just run here. And this is the name and the tenant that we have here. So you can see kind of the HTML file that we can view in Jenkins. A couple other things that we have here though. These CSV files, there's a plugin in Jenkins called the plot plugin. And what it takes is data in a CSV file and it'll allow you to do plots. So if we want to show from build to build plots, it needs data. This is the data for the plot file if we want to plot from Jenkins. And then lastly, when we run a job from Jenkins, if we want to pass back pass-fail status so that we can have this little, like we're showing here, this little pass-fail about what's going on here, we have to pass back XML data in a JUnit compatible format. That's what this stuff here is. So these extra files here are just allow Jenkins to kind of report some of the stuff a little bit more richly. That's how it works. Let's go ahead and kind of talk about, and we'll kind of show the job that we would run from Jenkins here. So to set up your own job and run this whole thing from Jenkins, we'll do a few things. First of all, rather than downloading manually like we just did, you'll set up here source code management to pull from a Git repository. And just pass in the name of that Git repository that we just used here. You can put in that same repository there. Down below here, this is where you'd pass in the command that you want to run. And again, put your own thresholds that you want on here, 1.2, 1.1, whatever, what percent of items you want to pass or fail here. Then down below here, there's a step post-build actions. What this is this is optional. You don't have to do this. But if we wanted to show plotting from build to build, how did the performance of all these page groups change? There's a plugin that you can download. And just to review how you download plugins, if you go to Manage Jenkins here, there's a section called Plugins, Manage Plugins. And you'll see a list of available plugins here. There's all these plugins here. The ones you're going to want to look for, in my tab there in the installed section, because I've already installed them, is there's one called the Plot plugin. That's this one down here, the Plot plugin. There's one called the HTML Publisher plugin, and there's one called the Text Finder plugin. So those 3 plugins, you want to install those. Essentially, just click the checkbox and hit install. Jenkins will install these plugins and allow you to grab that data. So after those plugins are installed, then we can do this next step that we have here, that we can add a new build step for plot build data. I've already filled these out, but just to add these plots here, you would go down and add a build step, and it will come up here with plot build data. And when it comes in, you're going to see that it's kind of empty in terms of the data. I'm not sure where that one, oh, there it is. I'm sorry, plot build data. So I filled it out, but just do that one. Select plot build data. For the plot group, I'm going to delete the empty one here and kind of use the full one to describe it. For the plot group is mPulse performance. These are just names of the plots here. The number of builds, how far back do you want to look, what type of line. And then point to those files. There's one file called the baseline page load time. So you'll set up one plot to use that data, and then set up a separate one to use this test page load time. So this will give you two plots so that you can see build to performance. Then a little further down here, if we want to be able to see in mPulse the HTML report, so here I'll leave this here so you can see this little section here, this link here will only appear if you have that HTML plugin installed there. But if you have that plugin installed, then you'll be able to go ahead and reference the HTML file, the one that we saw in our local directory. So all you have to do is pass into that plugin the name of the file, which is mPulse HTML summary.html. Kind of boring name there. And then lastly, down below here, there's this publish JUnit test. This is another build step that you can add here, actually post-build step. And what you're going to do that is you're going to tell it the name of this XML file, the same one that we saw in our local directory, this mPulse XML summary there. Point it to that. And when you do that, it's going to give you this, this chart that has the pass-fail like we showed before. I won't go back to it, but it has the pass-fail of each of those. And then very last step here, right now Jenkins, if it sees passes and fails in an XML summary, if it sees any failures, it would fail it. So this is kind of an override that says, hey, I only want to fail the job if both the, if the number of page groups that failed is more than the allowed number of page groups. So this is basically saying, I know that maybe some of my individual page groups has failed, but I only want to fail the overall job if there's, in that XML, there's some text that says overall fail, if I see overall fail, and that's it. So that's how you run it. It'll take about 15 to 20 minutes to set up, but please go ahead and send me questions if you have them. One other quick note is that if you do have questions, you're go into mPulse, you can go to this Contact Us. If you click up there, that's me, and some of the other SEs can help with that. Put questions in here. We'll get to them as soon as we can. I might be on calls, but I'll try and get to them as soon as I can, and we'll try and bring those up. But now you can automatically kind of, whenever a build goes out, run a job in Jenkins, and Jenkins will check for you and pass or fail based upon the performance of that job. Last thing I want to close with, though, is a couple of notes about that. There's a few other commands, line switches that you have. If you just type mPulse dynamic alerting -jar, I'll kind of pull this up here so you can see here. I don't want to do that whole thing. Blink. Here, let's go up here. Java-jar. If you just type that in the command line, oops, Java-jar mPulse dynamic alerting. I might have typoed that. Just make sure I didn't put an uppercase or camel case wrong there. So apologies for that. An LS. Oh, sorry. Java-jar dynamic alerting -jar. If you just do that, it'll give you kind of a full help file here. There's a lot of options here about things you can do. We did a breakout by page group. You could do breakout by country instead. We didn't filter to one country. You can add kind of query string filters in here. You can pass in relative time periods or static time periods here. So a few additional options that you can go through there are available here. This is kind of just describing what some of those values are that we talked about. For more information, please go ahead and either download the jar file directly. You can get to the source code from another GitHub repository up there. There's an article covering what we just showed here available on community.akamai.com. And then under the hood, what this is all based upon is the mPulse Query API, which is available at developer.akamai.com. So I hope you found this useful. If you have questions, again, reach out to us and let us know, and we're happy to answer them as they come up. Thanks again.